2009 feels like a different world. Flip phones were everywhere, streaming was just starting, and social media was still new. So much has evolved since then, but one thing has stayed the same: the federal minimum wage. That was also the year it rose to $7.25 an hour. It was the last increase in a series of regular adjustments over the years. Fast forward to today, 15 years later, and that rate hasn't budged, even as rent, groceries, and gas have climbed to levels few could have predicted back then. So, why has the wage remained the same? And what does it mean for people trying to survive on that amount? The minimum wage was first introduced in 1938 under the Fair Labor Standards Act during the Great Depression. Its purpose? To prevent exploitation and ensure that even the lowest paid workers could earn enough to meet basic living needs. Since then, it's been raised 22 times, usually to help it keep pace with inflation and cost of living increases. But here's the issue. While costs have been rising sharply, the minimum wage has been frozen. If the minimum wage had kept pace with inflation since 1968, today it would be about $12 an hour. In fact, it would be over $24 if it kept up with average worker productivity. Yet, it's still at $7.25. To put this in perspective, a full-time worker earning $7.25 an hour makes about $15,000 a year, well below the federal poverty line for a family of two. While some states and cities have raised their local minimum wages, nearly 1.6 million Americans still earn at or below the federal minimum. They're mostly adults, and many have children to support. So, why has it stayed the same? One reason is the intense debate around what would happen if the minimum wage increased. Many economists and activists argue that it's long overdue for a boost, pointing to studies suggesting that a $15 minimum wage would lift over 1 million people out of poverty. They argue it would help reduce income inequality, especially for women and minorities, who make up a large portion of low-wage workers. But there's a catch. Opponents warn that raising the minimum wage could backfire, especially on small businesses. Some studies suggest a sharp increase could lead to higher prices, forcing businesses to lay off workers or even shut down. And then there's the concern about inflation. They argue that if wages rise too quickly, it could push prices higher across the board, making things more expensive for everyone. Yet, even so, the pressure to raise wages keeps growing. For many, it's not just about earning more, it's about survival. Studies show that over half of minimum wage earners have trouble covering basic needs. And even with 2 or 3 jobs, they're often barely making ends meet. Still, anytime there's a push to raise it, the same questions resurface. Would it do more harm than good? So, what could actually work? One proposed solution that's gaining traction is to index the minimum wage to inflation. Essentially, the wage would automatically adjust each year to keep up with the cost of living. This approach has been adopted by some states already, and supporters say it could provide a more gradual, less disruptive way to ensure wages keep up with costs. Another idea is to create a tiered minimum wage, raising it higher in cities and regions with higher living costs, while keeping it slightly lower in more affordable areas. This would recognize the economic reality that living expenses vary widely across the country. Ultimately, the minimum wage was originally designed to ensure that workers could cover their basic needs. But as living costs continue to climb, it's clear that the current wage no longer fulfills that purpose. Finding a way to address this gap is essential if work is to continue offering people the opportunity to build a stable life. If you liked this video, please hit the like button and subscribe. Thank you for watching.